Hello, and welcome to the Office of the Patriot, where I continue to try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left and Rhino right. My name is Myron Ybarra, and I'm your host. If some of you have ever worked in the field of law enforcement, especially in the area of corrections, either institutional or community corrections, you have likely heard this bit of training advice while at your academy. The advice is this: if an inmate's lips are moving, they are lying. When I first heard this, I kind of chuckled to myself. However, I wasn't the only one. With almost 30 years under my belt now, I can tell you unequivocally that this little tidbit of advice is pretty accurate. And I bring this up because I recently watched an episode of Tucker Carlson on his tour of the United States. At one of the events, he spoke to the concept of watching what people, politicians, do as opposed to listening to what they say to get a more accurate grasp of who they are. You know, if they're liars or truth tellers. And to bring this point home, he used a dog's behavior as an example. Dogs can't really understand our language, but they do understand our behavior, the inflection of our voice, our body language, and they use these cues to determine what we want. Dogs watch what we do. They don't necessarily understand what we are saying. And if we were more like dogs, we would have a higher likelihood of knowing who is lying and who is telling the truth. We already do this to a certain degree. And we even have a term that we use to identify this behavior. It's called intuition, something that many Americans have been convinced to ignore. In this episode of Office of the Patriot, I'm going to go over the lies that the Democrat Party is presenting on behalf of Comrade Kamala to their constituency in hopes of securing their vote, and hopefully get us all to start trusting our intuition again. All right, let's get into this. This first ad features a young lady who claims she suffered a rape at the hands of her stepfather at the age of 12. As a result of this rape, she became pregnant and secured an abortion.
I've never slept a full night in my entire life. I was 5 years old when my stepfather abused me for the first time. I just felt like I was alone on a planet with a monster. I was 12 when he impregnated me. I just remember thinking, I have to get out of my skin. I can't be me right now. Like, this can't be it. I didn't know what to do. I was a child. I didn't know what it meant to be pregnant at all. But I had options. Because Donald Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, girls and women all over the country have lost the right to choose, even for rape or incest. Donald Trump did this. He took away our freedom.
First, this is an absolutely horrific case that I'm sure this young lady continues to suffer from. Hopefully, she's received or is receiving counseling and treatment for the rape and abortion she endured as a result of this douche canoe stepfather. But everything after this background of this young lady is, well, bullshit. First, Donald Trump did not overturn Roe v. Wade. That was done by the United States Supreme Court. And it's well documented as to why under the Dobbs decision. And I've included the Dobbs decision summary as well as all the receipts for this presentation in the description section below. The why in the simplest terms is because the determination of abortion should not have been in the hands of the Supreme Court, our federal government, in the first place. It should have been in the hands of the people. And the people are represented by their representatives in their respective states. Now, as opposed to correcting this blatant error, Comrade Kamala chose to endorse it. This lie is not only endorsed by the Democrat Party and Comrade Kamala, it is their number one issue that they are hoping lands them the presidency. Unfortunately, Comrade Kamala's number two Tiny Tim Walz didn't get the memo because he went out on his own with an ad that basically shot the first ad to shit.
I codified abortion rights after Roe got overturned because I go to work for the common good.
That's right. Tiny Tim just validated exactly what I just said. The states have the power to govern abortion processes, and in this case, as the state governor of Minnesota, Tiny Tim just signed an executive order titled Protect Reproductive Options Act that, in his words, codifies abortion rights for the citizens of Minnesota. Each state in the nation has the authority to determine how abortion is going to be administered within that state. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that many of the Bible Belt states are going to have very strict abortion laws, whereas states like Minnesota and California will likely allow abortions as a high school elective. This next bullshito ad talks about Comrade Kamala standing with the American people as she has taken on big banks and big oil companies and transnational gangs to stop the flow of fentanyl and human trafficking across our southern border, as the Attorney General of California. I'll just let you listen to the lie for yourself.
When the big banks unfairly foreclosed on homeowners, Kamala Harris took them on and secured billions for those families. And when big oil companies released toxic waste in our communities, Harris made them pay up too. A prosecutor, Harris took on the most powerful interests, while Donald Trump has always stood with corporations that rip us off, and he always will. Kamala Harris stands with us.
On the border, the choice is simple. Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. Donald Trump blocked a bill to increase the number of Border Patrol agents. Kamala Harris supports investing in new technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Donald Trump blocked funding for technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Kamala Harris supports spending more money to stop human traffickers. Donald Trump blocked money to stop human traffickers. Kamala Harris prosecuted transnational gang members and got them sentenced to prison. Trump is trying to avoid being sentenced to prison. There's two choices in this election: the one who will fix our broken immigration system and the one who's trying to stop her.
Okay, there's a couple issues with this ad. First, and while this doesn't fall into the realm of her lying, it does lend to the fact that Comrade Kamala is a liar. Because you should notice that in virtually all of her ads, to include this one, where she's touting her accomplishments, none of them are of her existing job as Vice President of the United States. They all refer to her work as a state prosecutor or Attorney General of California. Basically, she's asking to do a job for you that she's already been tasked to do as VP, but failed to do it. Kind of like, let me have a do-over. Next, she's had more than a few lies regarding all of these alleged accomplishments, like prosecuting transnational gangs of which she had no part in. Sure, she prosecuted gang members, but not the gangs as a whole, because, well, she doesn't have the authority to do that. In the ad, she also goes on to talk about Donald Trump blocking increasing Border Patrol agents and new technologies to stop the flow of fentanyl across the southern border. And this is an absolute lie. Trump hasn't been in office for 3.5 years, going on 4, and has no means to stop any legislative writ or executive order. What she's referring to is the border bill. And if you're watching this channel, you probably already know that the border bill was excessive pork barrel in the extreme. Only $22 billion was earmarked for border security, but $66 billion, 3 times the amount, was earmarked for the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And to garnish this shit sandwich, this bill also had idiotic border enforcement regulations that only froze illegal entry after 5,000 illegal entries were allowed for that day. And to put that in perspective, that would allow 1,825,000 new illegal immigrants in per year before any action to stop illegal immigration could be initiated by Border Patrol. That's much like allowing shoplifters to steal 20% of your product every day and then taking proactive measures to protect your assets after that threshold has been met. If you're asking yourself, why would this caveat be put into this bill? Take a look at what's happening with our voter rolls throughout the United States. State audits are finding that thousands upon thousands of people registered to vote who are not U.S. citizens. The Democrat Party knows this, and now so do you. And finally, we come to ad number 3, where you have a beady-eyed leftist who is obviously misled to believe that billionaires pay less taxes than she does. At least she could have done was to put up some balloons for her pity party. Take a look.
No one becomes a teacher to get rich, but there are times when I've really struggled to get by. It makes me so mad that billionaires pay less in taxes than I do. I don't want to pay more while they pay less, and Trump wants to give them even more breaks.
Yeah, I know 20 of you, and you're rich as hell. We're going to give you tax cuts?
Kamala Harris will cut taxes for working people, and she'll lower everyday costs by taking on price gouging. Trump fights for billionaires like him. Kamala fights for us.
FFPAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
I'm virtually certain that billionaires are paying significantly more in personal taxes than she is. What's sad here is she has fallen for the Democrats' ace in the hole, which is to redirect her righteous anger at Democrats in government to Trump and billionaires. First, most billionaires are Democrats, about 70% in fact. Next, they are not paying nothing, or what Biden claimed, I don't know, what was it, 8.2%? And even at 8.2%, if you were making $1 billion and you're paying 8.2% taxes on $1 billion, that's $82 million. I am certain that she's not paying $82 million a year in taxes. Because if she is, teacher salaries have really jumped up within the last few years. And given that my daughter is a teacher, when I ask her for that new Ferrari Monza SP2 next month, she better not complain at all. All right, I'm just kidding here. The real percentage that billionaires pay in personal taxes is roughly 23%. Of course, individual circumstances will vary between billionaire to billionaire, but the average is about 23%. This in comparison to the average income tax rate for non-billionaires, people like you and I, which is right around 13.6%. And then this lady goes on to blame Trump for the tax system. Now, I have my own thoughts on taxes, and I have an episode up on my channel that speaks to federal income taxes. So if you happen to be interested in this topic and what I have to say about it, I put a link in the description section below, along again with all the other sources for this episode. Okay, so back to the idea of politicians and bureaucrats lying. In a few of my earlier videos, I suggested the idea of criminal penalties for lying during campaigning. And my reasoning behind this was because both Harris and Trump are technically interviewing for a job as President of the United States. And I'm one of the people that gets to make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to hire one over another. Now, when people lie on a job interview, that's grounds for termination. However, in the case of the president and even the vice president, the only way he or she can be removed is through impeachment, and that requires a violation of law. So, a person can lie their way into office but can't be removed as a result of discovery of that lie after they are in office. It appears I am not the only person that has thought about this at length, because in Welsh Parliament, Parliamentarian Adam Price has put forward legislation that would make it a criminal offense for a politician to knowingly deceive the public, and anyone found guilty of this would be disqualified from maintaining their office. Honestly, I'm really of two minds on this. I do think that we get stuck between a rock and a hard place based on our vote, and we don't have, as Americans, the means to fire the president or vice president of the United States as a result of them lying to secure their position as president and vice president of the United States. By making this type of law, we could avoid that, because now there would be criminal consequences to lying. The other side of this coin is that we now have to decide who makes the determination that it is a lie. Is it Congress or the courts? Because a lie has to have, in legal parlance, mens rea, which loosely translates to a guilty mind. They have to know they are lying when they utter the lie with intent to deceive. And to do that, you're talking about moving things to a standard of evidence like beyond a reasonable doubt. And to reach a finding, it requires due process. I would like to read what your thoughts on the topic is. So please do me a favor and let me know, do you support changing or rather charging politicians if they are caught lying or not? Ultimately, right now, this goes back to being the dog. We have to look at the actions of our politicians, primarily past actions, and use that information to support our decision. Because, truth be told, when it's all said and done, actions always speak louder than words. And this concludes today's episode of Office of the Patriot. If you enjoyed the presentation, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share my channel on your social media. It's always appreciated. Always, please take the time to comment. Viewer engagement via comments is a major metric for channel accessibility on most social media platforms like YouTube and Rumble and Facebook and X. The more people that like, subscribe, and comment, the more this channel will come up when social and political content like this is searched for. And as always, have a blessed day and stay safe out there.